I'm going to go ahead and get started here. I've started the recording, and I'll be uploading as soon as we're done. First thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you what we're going to be working on. I did send out an email earlier this morning, but you might not have seen it yet. So we're actually going to take, I came up with an example that I thought was acceptable that would show enough that you could be dangerous with crystal reports. So I'm going to open up a project here, and we're going to go to the order entry. And what I did is I took an order entry report, the invoice information report as it was, and I turned it into an acknowledgement. So I'm going to go here to order entry, and I've got about 9 or 10 line items on this order. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and use the print button. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to print the original order entry. And you'll see what it looks like before, and then I'm going to print the one that I reworked, and then we're going to actually take the original and rework it to get to the second one. So I'm going to hit continue here on use original, and you can see it's very plain, kind of not so attractive. Got a couple pages where maybe there shouldn't be a couple of pages. If you guys notice on your report, if you do not have a barcode, just call in for support and we can help you get the barcode font so it doesn't have an exclamation point and some numbers. Okay, so that's what the original looks like. Pretty plain. It's just meant to be a basic printout of this order and what's going to go on to the invoice. So now I'm going to print, and I'm going to use the new alternative that I made and the one that we're going to create today. And you can see I've made it ac1.rpt, and I'm going to hit continue. Okay, so you can see I've reworked the font. I've moved the logo into the middle. I've made an acknowledgement title there. I've moved the project numbers over and lined everything up. I've also made it look a little nicer. So I've got dark and white here in the header, and then I've got all the font looking a little nicer. I've got line numbers here, and every other line is then gray. Okay, and it's got the order name at the bottom. So we're going to actually take, like I said, I'm going to print that other one so we can just look again side by side. We're going to take the original, and we're going to make that alternative. Okay, so that's our original, and this is the one we'll be creating. So quite a difference there. I am actually going to, I'm going to drag the box from here all the way up so it covers all of the area here. So the first thing you're going to want to do, and I'm assuming that you guys won't actually follow along doing this while I'm doing it, but I'm assuming that you all downloaded the trial version of Crystal Reports. I send out a link to get that. It'll work for 30 days. Listen, if you got like 30 computers in your office, you can install that thing on 30 different computers and have it for 30 times 30 days. So it's not really expensive to buy. It's if you buy it, you can buy the upgrade version. Because you're using Crystal Reports for eManage, you can buy the upgrade version of Crystal Reports. And I think it's something like, I don't know, $300 or something. But the nice thing is you can change any report anytime you want to. Okay, so I don't know what that's worth to you. To me, it was worth $350 to be able to do it. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and close eManage here while we work in Crystal Reports. And first of all, your reports exist locally on your computer. Okay, so we have to open up the existing report. And I don't expect you guys to know where or what all the report names are, but if you want to do a report change, just call in and we'll let you know what report you're going to modify. You have to work with our existing reports. You cannot just create reports out of nothing. You work with our existing reports and modify those. So you cannot, if there's a sub-report or anything like that, you can't go deleting things out of there. You can delete fields that are just showing so they don't show, but you can't delete sub-reports, and I'll talk about that a little. Okay, so your files, your reports exist in your eManage directory, which I'm on Windows 8, and I'm using 64-bit eManage. So if I go to C drive, and I go to Program Files x86, and I go down to Marketplace Software, and I go to image version 764-bit for Microsoft.NET 4.5, and there's a reports directory here. Okay, in here we're going to be working with the invoice info report, so I'm going to go down there in alphabetical order, and I'm going to go to invoice info. I'm going to double click it. Now, if you're on Windows 7, Windows Vista, or Windows 8, there's security on the program files directory, so you can't just open it and save it right back to there. Okay, so it's saying we can't open it for writing because there's security on the file. So I'm just going to say OK here. The first thing that I am going to do when I go to modify a report is save it as a different name somewhere else. Okay, because you don't want to override our existing report and have everything messed up, because then you're waiting for us then to fix it for you, and I don't want that to happen. Okay, so I'm going to go to File, Save As, and I'm just going to save it to my desktop, and I'm going to call it AC2. Okay, so now there's no danger of me overwriting the existing report. I'm not going to have any errors about not being able to write it, nothing like that. Okay. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is show you that Crystal reports are in sections. Everything in Crystal reports is about sections. So certain things, like page header, a report header is going to show up only on the head part of the report. Page header is on every page. There are different sections that you can add for page headers. Okay, and then the details is going to have all of the, in this case, all the parts. It's going to cycle through all the parts and put them all in there. And then there's a report footer, okay, and a page footer. So I'm going to start out by changing the font on this first section here. Okay, so I'm dragging a box around all the things in the section here. So everything's highlighted. You cannot click on one of these fields and drag a box. You have to drag in the white space around the boxes. Okay, and I'm going to go up here to my font. And I'm going to change, maybe I'm not. Let's grab these. Okay, I'm going to change this to Arial. Okay, you notice I'm not going to change the font size. I'm leaving this at the font size it was. Then I'm going to grab these and I'm going to change these to Arial. And you notice how when I had all this highlighted, it wouldn't let me change anything up here. I probably had something highlighted that was not text. Okay, when you do that, it won't let you change the font. Okay, big problem that a lot of you guys have is your logo is either too big or in the wrong spot. Maybe it's not centered, because we have a standard size that these go in. That doesn't mean that you have to have the size that we recommend, okay, or that we've set. You can. I'm just going to click on these and I'm going to move these over under the logo. I'm just highlighting and I'm using my arrow key on my keyboard to move them over. And I'm going to move the logo over to the middle. Okay, and I'm highlighting and I'm using the arrow key to move it left and right. Okay, if my logo is bigger than this, I can go in between these sections and I can make this part bigger and make my logo report bigger. Okay, if it's not that wide, I can do this and then I can center it better. Okay, so however your logo looks, and you can change these reports and see how it looks by running it in the program in order to get the right thing there. There is no center in the report when in the logo, just because the image inside is not it's part of the subreport, and the subreport doesn't center itself in that section. So you have to do it manually and figure out where you want it. Okay, so in this top section, I'm going to go ahead and move this stuff down. Okay, and I'm going to create a text field. So I'm going to right-click. I'm right-clicking in the white space, and I'm going to insert a text object. Okay, and I'm going to just click the crosshairs where I want to put it approximately, and I'm going to do all caps for this. Okay, I'm going to call it an acknowledgement. Okay, and I'm going to just stretch it out a little. And you got to be careful with this stretch out thing, because if you don't get it in exactly the right spot, if you've ever used crystal reports before, if you don't get it in the right spot, it starts moving it around, and it's a pain in the butt. Okay, so I'm doing that. I'm also going to bold it. So this is just like Microsoft Word. A lot of these formattings work exactly like Microsoft Word. I'm going to go ahead and justify this. I'm going to line it to the right, and I'm also going to do the same for the things below it. And I'm going to go ahead and make this a little bit bigger. And when I make that a little bit bigger, I'm going to stretch this out a little as well so that I have enough room to see it all. Okay, so now I'm going to take these and I'm going to align them to the right. Okay, and then I'm going to take both of these items and make them the same size. So I'm going to highlight both by hitting the Control key and clicking on both of them. Okay, I want to make them both this size, the size of the project ID, because the job number is probably not going to be that big. So I'm going to right-click on the one I want the other one to take the size of. So I'm going to right-click here on the project ID, and I'm going to go to Size, and I'm going to go to Same Width. Okay, so now that's made job number the same width as project ID, because that's the one I right-clicked on when I said make the same size. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and move these over. Oh, I'm actually going to take these project ID and job number, and I'm going to highlight acknowledgement, and I'm going to align the rights. So I'm going to right-click on acknowledgement because that's where I want it. That's where I want it all to align to. And I'm going to go to Align, and I'm going to go to Rights. If you are just dragging and dropping these, if you're just dragging and dropping these text fields around, they will never line up. You have to do it this way. You have to align things together, or else they will be completely off. And you'll probably notice our old reports were very much off because who knew that you had to do that? Okay, so I've aligned the rights. Now I'm going to move these over. Okay, so I'm just going to use my arrow key to move those over. Okay, so my top section is done. I've made it a little bigger. I've changed the font size and moved my logo into the middle. Again, if I want to resize this any, I can do that, or center it any way I want to do that. So now I'm going to take the second section, and I'm going to change the font on this. So I'm going to draw a box around all of these, and I'm going to change them to Arial as well. Okay, I'm not going to change the font size. I'm just going to do this, and this will leave everything where it was as far as the size goes. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move this down a little. So I'm highlighting, dragging a box around these to highlight multiples, and I'm using my arrow keys to move them around. Okay, I also want to make sure these are aligned. So build to and install to, if they're not aligned, it can look really stupid. So I'm going to highlight both using the Control key. I'm going to go over to Build to, right-click, Align, and Align Tops. Okay, that'll just make sure that they line up properly. I could do the same thing with each one of these. So I could take Attention here and Company Name and drag a box there, and I can align the tops on these. Okay, so I can do these for each of these. And remember, if you're sending this out to a customer, you should probably make it look decent. Okay, so it's worth taking the time to do this kind of thing when you're sending stuff out to a customer. So I'm just moving this other stuff down a little. Okay, now that those are aligned, I'm going to take these two, and now I want to align to Ship To location. So I'm going to right-click, Align Tops. And you see how it's moving them so that they're going to be aligned. Okay, and I'm going to take this, and right-click, and Align Tops. And I'm going to take this, and Align Tops. Okay, take these and Align Tops. And this next section here. Oops. So don't do what I just did. I'll get click happy. Okay, so I'm going to take these. And Crystal Reports is really tricky with the mouse. So you gotta be careful where you're clicking because it'll do stuff like that. Like highlight things that you didn't count on highlighting. So Just be very careful when make sure that what you've highlighted is what you wanted to highlight. Okay, and we're just going to line tops on that. Now, you can see this actually inserted a section that I didn't want. I've got a C and a D now, so I'm just going to right click on this and I'm going to delete the section. Okay, and my barcode font looked a little off, so I'm going to go ahead and make that a little bigger. Okay, now I'm going to, you can see that this is page header D and I have a page header E. So, and I don't really like that all this stuff is in gray, so I'm going to actually move stuff around a little. So I'm going to make this section a little bit bigger. And I'm going to make this section a little bit bigger because the two are going to merge together. So I'm going to drag a box around here, and I'm going to move those fields down, and then I'm going to take these actual data fields here, and I'm going to move them down into the white space. Okay, and then I'm going to bring this section up. Now I like, Stefan's been working on these reports a lot, and I like the way that he's done the headers, the column, or these field headers. I like what he's done with the font being white and then the background being a dark gray. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Now, if you know anything about colors, in Windows, the colors, anything that's the same red, green, and blue, the same number is going to be a gray, a white, to black, and anywhere in between. So I'm going to right-click on the page header D here. I'm going to go to Section Expert. Okay, and in here there's color right here. Okay, so I'm going to change this color from this lighter gray to a darker gray. So let's do a, let's see what I did here. So this dark gray is 92, 92, 92. If I did a 128, a 128 and a 128 and a 128, it's still going to be gray. It's just going to be a lighter gray. So the lower the number, the darker the gray. Okay, but I'm going to use this 92, 92, 92. Okay, now I'm going to change all of my fields to be white for color. So I'm using my control key and I'm highlighting these. And I'm going to go up here and change my font color to white. At the same time, I'm also going to change this to Century Gothic because that's a better looking font for that. Okay, so now I've changed that to Century Gothic. That looks very familiar to you if you were using eManage reports now. And what I like that Stefan does is he does these in all caps. So now you're not going to be able to see it when you double click on these to change to text. So you're going to have to highlight it to be able to see it because it's white on white. Okay, so I'm just going to put in here customer PO. Double click here. This is going to be confirmed with. Okay, this is going to be terms. I'm just double clicking on the field, highlighting the text, and typing. Order type. SIC, if you guys don't use SIC or accounting ID, you can actually hide these, and I think I will do that. So you can hide these by highlighting them. Okay, format multiple objects from the right-click menu. And in every single formatting of every single thing in Crystal Reports, there's something called suppress. Suppress means don't print it. Okay? So you can either suppress this so it doesn't show, but it will still show in the report where it was, or if it's just a field like that, you can delete those. Okay, so I'm just going to actually delete those because I don't really want them anymore. Okay, so now I can move my order type, make it a little bigger. I'm highlighting using my, stretching them out using this, and I'm just going to move them over. Okay, I'm also going to make sure they're the same size. So I'm going to make sure that I'm going to right click on the one I want, that is the size I want. I'm going to go to size, and I'm going to make them the same width. And then I'm going to align the lefts to make sure that they're in the right spot. They may look like they're in the right spot in here, but when you actually print it, it probably won't be. So you have to align. I'm going to go to terms, make that a little bigger, and I'm going to right click, make the same width, and I'm going to align lefts. Okay, confirmed with, I'm going to make bigger and move over. And I'm going to make the same width. And I'm going to align lefts. And customer PO, same thing, I'm going to make bigger. And I'm going to make the same width. And align lefts. Okay, now here I have these fields here that are still Times New Roman, not going to look really good. So I'm going to make those Century New Gothic, or Century Gothic. Okay, and I'm going to highlight all these, and I'm going to make sure they're aligned on the top too. So I'm going to right click, align tops. Again, it's really better if you do the alignment because it's going to look a little off if you don't do that. So I'm just going to stretch out this top part here, make sure this has enough space. Okay. Okay, and I'm going to bring these down just a little bit. And since I brought those down, I'm going to bring this down just a little bit as well. Okay, and these are headers, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change these into Century Gothic as well. And I'm going to bring that down to an 8-point. I'm going to change these as well to Century Gothic and 8-point. Okay, now in this first section, or this whole section, I actually want to draw a box that goes from here all the way through to here. So I'm going to go up to the Insert menu, and I'm going to insert a box. Now, as long as you go from the section start, right, which is going to be right here, and you drag through to the footer, it's going to encompass the entire thing there. Okay, so I'm going to move this customer P over just a little bit, make it a little smaller. Okay, I'm also going to align these better. So you can see that these aren't aligned anymore. So I'm going to highlight these. I'm going to go to this one that's the size I want, and I'm going to make the same width. Okay, and I'm going to align rights. Okay, price each, I'm going to move over here, and I'm going to make the same width and align rights. And I'm actually moving these over because I'm going to make another field here for the line numbers. So that's going to go on the very left. So I'm going to just resize these just a little bit here. Okay, so I'm moving that over. I'm just going to make this a little bit smaller. Okay, and I'm going to make the same width and align lefts. And part number, I'm going to make a little bit bigger and move over. Make the same width and align lefts. Okay, quantity, I can make this a little bigger. Generally, you guys might run out of space on there. Actually, let me make description just a little bit smaller. Move that over. and move quantity over. Now, if you guys, one of the things that I've noticed you guys needing or asking for is to change how many decimal places. So remember, these things up here, they're headers. Okay, so this is the actual data, and when you move your mouse over, you can see that it's actually data that's pulling from the database. So if I right-click on this quantity and I go to Format Field, it knows it's a number, and it's basically asking, how do you want me to format it? Okay, so you see it's going with a 1,000 separator and 2 decimal places. So I'm actually going to customize this, and I'm going to change this to no decimals. So if you guys don't ever sell anything that's a partial quantity, you guys can change that decimal to not have any. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do that. And now I've got space in the very front to put a line number. Okay, so the line numbers are done with a running total. So I'm going to right-click on running total over here, and I'm going to do new. And this is a little more advanced, so just want you guys to be aware that this, what we're going to do in this part is just a little more advanced than I was going to go at first, but what the heck. Okay, and I'm going to do a running total on the part number. So I'm going to click a part number over here, and I'm going to add it to the field to summarize, and I'm going to do a count. And I'm going to click OK. This is why I wanted to record this, because you guys can do this anytime you want to on any report you want to. If you want a line number, you can put it on there. Okay, so I'm going to make sure this is the right font. So we're going Century Gothic at 8 point. Okay, by default, it puts the header in for me. So it makes it underline, and it uses the default font. So I'm going to go ahead and change this to Century Gothic. Oh. And I'm going to change that to an 8 point. And I'm going to make that smaller. Okay, your line number doesn't have to be that big. I'm sure you guys don't have, thousands of line items on your orders. But if you do, you can always make this bigger and make quantity smaller or part number smaller, any one of those. Now, I'm sure you guys noticed when you put in phase descriptions and stuff on the phase quote, that when you have text that is bigger, it wraps around. But sometimes if you don't format it right, it'll cut off some of the letters. So I'm going to show you how to avoid that if you have things that are text. And part number and description in here are text. So I'm going to take those, highlight them both, and I'm going to go up here to justify. Okay, so up here, this section, justify, will keep it from doing that cutoff of the letters on the very end when it wraps. Okay, I like the way this is done up here with the headers, so I'm going to go ahead and change these to all caps. So I'm double clicking on the field, and I'm going to just do this in all caps. Just remember that these and the page header, these are the headers of the record or the field. So I can change those. I cannot change these. Okay, again, on price each, if you needed it to have 3 decimal places, or you wanted to make one alternative report that had 3 decimal places, this is where you do that. I think I got 2 spaces in there. There. Okay, and then total. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put a line in to separate these pieces right here. So I'm going to go to Insert Line, and I'm just going to draw a line from here to here. If I don't get it exact, it's okay, I can move it around So I can actually take this now and use my arrow key and move it down. Okay, you can see here that my box on the side is not taking up the whole space. I can actually drag that and make sure it takes up the entire space of the report. Okay, likewise, if I want lines going in between each of these fields, I can do that as well. Might as well do that here. Okay, if you take it from here all the way to the bottom, it will take up the whole entire space of the report. Okay. Now, when you do lines like this, you're going to want to make sure and choose the thickness of that. So if I click on the line and then right click, I format the line. Okay, you can see it's pretty thick. So I really do want to do a hairline on this, which is the very first section. It says hairline. Okay, and I can choose my color. Maybe I want to make it a little less dark. Okay, and then I'm going to take this line as well, and I'm going to do the same thing. Hairline. Your box is going to be a little bit darker and heavier, so which you can also choose to make whatever you want. So I can go to the box, right click, format box, and I can tell it, I don't want you to be black, I want you to be, I'm going to do this color here. Okay, let's see where we are at here. So I'm going to take this next section and I'm going to change the font so it's consistent. I'm going to make it Arial, just like the top section. Okay, and maybe I'm going to make that a little more spread out. So I'm going to highlight here, then I'm going to highlight here. And using my arrow keys, I'm moving them down. Okay, I'm also just going to make sure they're aligned on the right. So I'm going to highlight these, right click, align, rights. Okay, and actually I'm going to move this whole section up just a little bit. Now, in your order report, there is a pool sales people RPT. If you ever see something that says RPT in here, just like logo.rpt, you cannot delete it from the original report. The only thing you can do, if you don't want it to show, is suppress it. Okay, so I'm just going to move it out so it's out of the way, and I'm going to right-click it, and I'm going to format. Remember that every single thing in Crystal Reports that's an object can be formatted and has a suppress. Okay, since you can't delete these, not like those fields that I deleted first, you have to suppress it if you don't want it. Okay, because the Crystal Reports program that runs, it's looking for that subreport, and if it doesn't find it, it will not run the report. Okay, now I'm just going to take the bottom section here since we're not doing the salespeople, and I'm going to bring this up. So now I've got a very small, very efficient report here. Okay, and I think I'm just going to see what that looks like now. So I'm going to File. I'm going to go ahead and just save that. And I'm going to copy it now, because remember I could not copy directly into my program files reports directory because of rights. So I'm going to go to my desktop where I saved it. Okay, there's my Act 2. I'm going to right click, I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to put it into my folder where my reports are, which is C, program files, depending on what operating system you have. It might be program files or program files x86, marketplace software, your version of eManage. If you have two of them in there, one of them 64-bit, that's probably the one that you're going to use. And you're going to put it into your reports directory. Okay, so now that I'm there, I'm just going to right click in the white space and paste it. Okay, again, because it's Windows 8 or Windows 7 or Windows Vista, it's asking me for permission to do that. Okay, so I'm going to hit continue. Now, I'm going to go ahead and add this into eManage as an alternative, so, and we're going to see what it looks like. Okay, so I'm going to just minimize that, and I'm going to log into eManage. Okay, so we already know, caps lock. We already know what the file name, the original file name is called. So we're going to go to Tools, and we're going to configure Crystal Report Alternatives. And the original file name was called Invoice Info. So I'm going to go into Original Report, and I'm going to pull up Invoice Info. They're in alphabetical order. Okay, and my new report is called Act 2, and I'm going to give a description. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and save that. And you'll see it shows up down in my list of configured Crystal Report alternatives. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and open up my project, and I'm actually going to do a smaller one and a bigger one. So I'm going to go here to this, and I'm going to go to Order Entry, and I'm going to go ahead. So this has just 4 line items on it, and I'm going to print. Now, because now I have 2 alternatives, I only have 2 choices in here of what I want to do, or use original. Okay, so Act 2. If I want to always use Act 2, I can say remember my choice. Okay, it doesn't automatically skip this window. It just makes it so that this is already filled out, and you can just hit continue. Okay, so that's what our report looks like now. Again, I can change any of the boxes around here. I'm going to export it as a PDF and see what that looks like. Okay, so I'm just going to go and take a look at that. Sometimes the barcode font will shrink when you do PDFs. Okay, so our box looks pretty decent. Again, I could put line numbers. I could put these lines in between each of the columns here if I wanted to. I can add any of those things, and I can put lines up in this section as well. So let me just do that real quick. Okay, so I'm going to go back to Crystal Reports, and I also noticed that my line here did not go all the way through. So I'm going to drag this a little bit further into the next section. Okay, and I'm just going to copy that line using Control-C, and I'm going to paste the line here. Okay, and I'm going to put it there. Maybe move this over just a little bit. Okay, when you're doing this, sometimes you're just going to have to move things around in order to get it to look right. So, and I'm sure you can see why we don't do many of these custom reports for you guys, because every little piece of it is important and time consuming. Okay, so I'm just taking that same line and copying it over to these sections. And remember, it's important that the line goes all the way down to the bottom here, or else it won't continue on through the sections. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save that. Remember, it's saved on my desktop. So now I'm going to go to my desktop, and I'm going to replace it again in the program files. So I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to paste it into my reports directory. Now, if you do this, you have to distribute these reports to everybody's machine into the same place. Okay, it's not something that automatically happens. You have to actually do that. And the reason why is because if I stored them in the database and had you download them every time, some of the files, when you put pictures in, can become pretty big. So I don't want people that work outside or even inside having to download megabytes at a time just to run a report. So, okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do that, and we're going to print the report again. This time we're going to use that other larger one. Okay, so I'm going to choose my Act 2. Okay, so this has all of the different elements, and you can see it's got those lines looking a little better. Okay, and it's got the box around the whole thing. Again, I could put lines in this section as well if I wanted to. The one thing it's missing is the every other line being gray. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick and show you. Now, this is a little more advanced than you'll probably actually want to be, and I actually copied the code. So if you guys want this code for alternate colors, it's pretty simple to do if you already have the code. So I'm going to just pull this up, and I'm actually making it a silver color. Okay, and remember, everything's done by section. So the section I want to be alternating gray is this section right here. So I'm going to right-click on Details, and I'm going to go to Section Expert. Okay, and I'm going to go over here to Color. And I'm going to choose this X2, which is putting a formula in. So it's going to tell it for every other line, do that gray. So I'm going to highlight what's in there. Okay, and I'm going to replace this with the line number field. So I'm going to get rid of that. And I'm going to look for my line number and double click that. Okay, so now I've got if the line number is the alternate one, then do white, otherwise do silver. Okay, so I'm going to save and close that and click OK. And I'm going to save, and I'm going to replace the file. Once I've made the alternative, remember all I'm doing is copying the file and replacing the existing one. Okay, again, it has to be done on every computer that you want to have it. Okay, so you really want to get all of your changes done all at once and get them out to people done. You don't want to be testing on everybody's computer there. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and print this again and do my Act 2. Okay. And as you can see now, I have every other line is now silver. Okay. I think, wow, that about does it. 45 minutes. Any questions? I'm going to open it up. Again, you guys, this can be really, really simple, just a matter of moving things around, changing the font, stuff like that, moving your logo. Like I said, if your logo doesn't look good, your report doesn't look good. So you can, instead of us telling you what size to make it, you can make that any size you want. Just make sure it fits into the report. Okay. Any questions? I'm just going to sit here for a few minutes, and if you guys have questions about this, I'm happy to answer.
Philip, up in the header, is that where you can delete things, or that's where you suppress it?
Anything that's not a sub-report. Okay, so the only things you cannot delete from the report are things that say RPT. Okay. This and the logo.rpt, and other reports, like let me just show you the installation report, because it actually has a lot of sections to it, a lot of sub-reports. So when I go and look at that one, okay, if you delete one of the sub-reports, the report's just not going to run, because like I said, it's going to be looking for that sub-report and not be able to find it. So let me pull that up. Installation. Okay. So you can see in here, sub-report, 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 sub-report. You see all these things are sub-reports. So the whole report, you don't actually see any of the data like we see in the other one.
Right.
We see a bunch of sub-reports here. Okay. So, at some point I will have a more advanced class that talks about working with sub-reports. But again, you can't add a subreport or take one away from our existing reports. Okay, it just doesn't work that way. I do want to show you guys also that in here, so in this acknowledgement thing that we made, there's also the database fields, and not every report that we do uses every field. So if you look over here, you can see all the fields that are available to you. Okay, and the ones with checkboxes are the ones we used in the report, but you can see like project name, we didn't use in the report. Okay, if you wanted the project name in there, you could drag it over to your report, format it, okay, and make sure that I'm going to right justify, I'm going to align it with the other things so it looks right. Okay, so I'm going to align to here, align the rights. Okay, and I'm actually going to maybe stretch this out a little. Okay, I'm going to move that. And I'm going to make this take up this whole space. So I know you guys, I think on the invoice, I added the order, like the order name onto the invoice. And maybe if you don't like that, you can just suppress it or delete it from that report. So now if you know how. So I'm going to go and do that, project name, and save it. Okay, I'm going to copy and replace it. So it's pretty simple to make these changes. It's just a matter, you just got to be aware of what report. So if you don't know what report, and we don't expect you to know what every report name is, but if you ask, if you call in, we'll be able to tell you what report you're going to modify to get a certain report replaced. Okay, and if you need help doing the alternative setup, we can help you do that as well. So I'm going to print this now with the project name on there. Okay, and it was Dorsa. I could have put project name and then Dorsa, so it had a header, but if you guys name your projects really well, it'll be like that. Okay, and you can tell it if it's a big project name, you can tell it can grow. So in Chris Reports, remember, every text field, right-click, format field, and in common, there's a can grow. Can grow tells it to wrap around and get bigger. Okay? So if you have a text field that's cutting off and not wrapping, you need to tell it to grow, that it can grow. It won't grow further out to the right, it'll grow further down in size and wrap around. If you're going to let something grow, you also want to justify it so it doesn't cut off any of those letters. Okay? Any other questions?
Hey, Philip, this is Shane.
Hey, Shane.
So I was just going to reference that, how do you know the report name? If you actually do the save back to eManage, it'll actually put the name up there.
Oh, yeah.
So you know how to find it.
Yeah, let's look at that. So let me do this. Print, use original. That's pretty smart, Shane. Okay, save to eManage, and it's called invoice info. Right. Okay, let's try the packing slip. Maybe the packing slip. See, make sure it's... So even if you're using an alternative, does it use the alternative name if you're doing an alternative?
Correct.
Okay, so there's packing slip. We know what that one's called. I'm impressed, Shane. You did good. Okay, Act 2, and let's just see if that shows up as Act 2 there. Oh, so see, nope. Even if you're doing the alternative, it comes up with the original name, so you know what to name it, or which one you're going to modify. That's awesome. Thanks.
Yep.
So you guys see, I mean, I did this and talked about it and did the original. I did this in about 35 minutes. Okay, and if I wasn't chatty, I could have done this in about 15 minutes. So it's not really difficult to do these things if you want to. I mean, this is simple. It's a simple change, makes the report look 100 times better than it did, right? And I called it an acknowledgement. That's really what the order information or the invoice information report is. Okay, I'm going to shut up now, and you guys can ask any questions. I'm going to leave it open for about 5 minutes. So if anyone wants to ask. Don't be shy.
So for that silver color, that is a code that we need to get from you then, correct?
No, if you actually, you can play around with it. It's really simple. What I did for the grays, so here, let me take this section. I'm going to go into the section, and I'm going to go to Section Expert, and I'm going to go to Color. Okay, every single gray or dark is the same number in red, green, and blue. Okay, so if I do red, green, and blue, let's say I change this blue to a 120. You see how now it's a gray blue, right?
Right.
So making these the same keeps it black to gray. Okay, so if I did 15, 15, 15, it's pretty black.
Right.
Likewise, if I do 240, it goes up to 255. Okay, so 240, 240, 240. You see it's a very light gray.
Right. I was talking about when you did the every other line one.
Oh, yeah. That code, let me just show you that. So that code, it is something that I will send to you. It is actually pretty simple to just copy and paste it, but if I go here to color and I go to the X2, this is telling it only do the background color if, right? So this is where I tell it, and yes, we can send you the code. All you're going to do with the code is replace this